Hello everyone! Megan Pete, or more famously associated with her moniker, Megan Thee Stallion, is an up-and-coming Houston-born rapper with a high-profile repertoire, collaborating with artists like Beyonce and Cardi B on the likes of hit songs such as Savage and WAP. She's also become somewhat of a cultural icon, coining the ubiquitous phrase "hot girl," defining what it means to lead a lifestyle of fully embracing one's confidence, loving who you are, loving what you do without the care of what others might think. Megan Thee Stallion had garnered a prominent rise in which would set the path for clear stardom. However, no one would foresee the misfortune that would take place and lead to the subsequent conversations on the harsh realities that Black women face.
Imagine niggas lying by shooting the real bitch just to save face.
It was in the early hours on July 12th that Los Angeles Police Department, LAPD, would be responding to an incident which involved gunshots being fired. Reports say what started off as an argument in a vehicle eventually became violent as what succeeded was a sound of gunshots. The vehicle then followed a rapid departure out of the Hollywood Hills area. A conducted traffic stop located the vehicle in question and resulted in the detainment of 4 individuals: Megan Thee Stallion, fellow rapper Tory Lanez, Lanez's bodyguard, and a friend of Megan. Later in that morning, it was revealed that Tory Lanez, or legally recognized as Daystar Peterson, was charged of carrying a concealed weapon and had been released on bail, while another person in the vehicle had been transported to a local hospital so that an unspecified foot injury could be treated. Initially announced, the foot injury would be the consequence of broken glass in the vehicle, but the victim, who happened to be Megan Thee Stallion, actually came out to disclose that such foot injury had been the ramification of multiple gunshot wounds, which she claims were very well meant to harm her. The online community started to wonder who this person might be and the intentions behind it, eerily raising the thoughts of if Tory Lanez was a gunman. It wasn't until a month or so later that Megan Thee Stallion came out once again via Instagram Live to finally name her perpetrator, which she addresses to be Tory Lanez. This led to even more of an onslaught of speculation and debate. The public was asking some legitimate questions like, did Tory Lanez really do it? What were his motives for doing so? And why did Megan change up her initial statement? Some even postulated the absoluteness of Megan being injured or not. She recounts in the video to explain why she hadn't told the police in the beginning, reasoning that she had done so to ensure that they wouldn't get into any further trouble or complications. In response to these allegations, Tory Lanez took to September 25th to release an album which was meant to debunk Megan's accusations toward him, describing it to be a situation of Megan and her team trying to frame him. I know that was a lot, but let's talk about it. Let's address the question everyone is asking. Why did Tory Lanez shoot Megan Thee Stallion? While this may seem like a localized incident, this is really a part of a grander problem that needs to be highlighted. Violence against women, but more specifically, violence against Black women. Tory Lanez shooting Megan Thee Stallion was an act of hostile sexism, stereotypical views that is suggestive of women being subservient and inferior. America has a long history of sexism and racism that is hard to overlook, and the cruel reality is that it is so deeply ingrained in American society, from culture to politics to academia, that it has led to this cycle of stereotyping and microaggressive acts on Black women. To simply put it, Black women get the extremely short end of the stick. Megan Thee Stallion reveals in her New York Times opinion piece, "Why I Speak Up for Black Women," that Tory's extreme actions played out due to the fact that Megan exercised her free will to walk away from him in the argument that exploded. To walk away from someone does not warrant the act of violence, and to do so displays the clear lack of empathy and disregard for others. Black women live their lives plagued by the pressures of adultification, sexualization, being labeled as an angry Black woman, and the catalyst for the violence inflicted upon them is because of the situations in which create the microcosms for objectification. This perilous environment is so widespread that it has become somewhat of a desensitizing force, negatively normalizing the violence which occurs to Black women, and unfortunately becomes more and more forgotten and overlooked as time passes on. To further comprehend the complexities of this issue, we must think about why Megan Thee Stallion chose not to tell the truth to the police in the initial reports. Intertwined in this issue is a relationship the Black community have with the police and how it can lead to Black women having to put themselves second in order to conform to authority. Normative social influence, the influence that shepherds us to obey and conform in an effort to be liked and accepted, has taught us to conform to authority figures because failure to do so equals repercussions. However, specifically in the Black community, the repercussions on failing to comply is even more brutal and dangerous. This year especially has illuminated the mistreatment Black people face, bringing up the discussions of Black Lives Matter and the many forms of systemic and systematic racial injustice. In lieu of the conversations on police brutality, it is quite sad to think that Megan Thee Stallion had to not only protect herself, but also her perpetrator from the very figures created to protect the people in the first place. Megan Thee Stallion, who has been avidly critical of the very despotism and corruption in law enforcement, and like many others in the Black community, experienced the results of normative social influence, public compliance with the absence of private acceptance. It makes one deliberate what would have happened if Megan Thee Stallion had told LAPD that she had been shot and how the police would have assessed the situation differently. An additional thing we must direct our attention to is the manner in which Tory Lanez responded to Megan's accusations towards him. In order to analyze his utilization of persuasive communication, it is pertinent to dissect what exactly Tory Lanez is trying to convey and the nature at which he attempts to do so. By implementing the Yale attitude change approach, who said what to whom, Tory Lanez's rebuttal on this entire matter is that Megan Thee Stallion, along with the assistance of her team, were endeavoring to falsely incriminate him, all made in an effort to clear his name from the accumulated amount of public scrutiny he faced. Lanez's methodology on this pretense is structured in the form of the release of his newest album, labeled Daystar, and it is highly important to recognize the way he tries to shift the blame and dispose of any accountability. Tory Lanez could have addressed this whole affair by making a public statement when the fiasco first emerged, yet he audaciously took to an album, mind you 2 months after the events that went down, to profess his innocence, an album in which he makes profit from. It is not surprising that Tory Lanez knew his fans and the public wanted to tune in to hear his side of the story, yet his actions speak of a calculated manner to try and claim blamelessness while simultaneously trying to make some financial gain from the ensuing publicity. The unfortunate aspect to this release is that he was able to successfully convince people that he hadn't committed any wrongdoing. The elaboration likelihood model illustrates there being 2 routes in persuasive communication. One being the peripheral route, when contents of an argument aren't factored in, rather people are swayed and distracted more by superficial and surface characteristics. In this case, the surface characteristic would be Tory Lanez's argument manifested in an album, as it clouds one's ability to focus on the counterpoints displayed, instead opting for a flashier medium and the use of strong emotional language. Black women deserve to be heard and regarded for highlighting the violence struck upon them. And that is why it is tremendously important to take account of the sheer manipulative tactics employed by Lanez in an effort to clear his name and switch blame onto Megan Thee Stallion. The way the public reacted to this incident very much is a reminder on how Black women are constantly disrespected and ignored in many areas of life. When Megan Thee Stallion first announced her asseverations that Tory Lanez had fired at her, she encountered a bombardment of disbelief and ridicule, mentioning that people have publicly questioned and debated whether I played a role in my own assault, which is why Megan had initially been silent about the aggression in fear she would be met with skepticism. There's a culture of not believing women who come forward and saying that they were victims of violent crimes. And part of that suspicion Megan faced online had to do with this phenomenon, deindividuation. Deindividuation is a disconnect of normal constraints on behavior when people cannot be distinguished, resulting in an increase in impulsivity and deviant behavior. While Megan was flooded with support from artists like Beyonce, Rihanna, and Kehlani, some of the experiences of deindividuation played out by this incident becoming a part of meme culture, even having celebrities like 50 Cent participate in the insensitive jokes that circulated when the story had first broke out. The mass expanse of the universe has bred this environment for people to have the mentality that their commentaries, whether such topics are serious or not, will be forgotten as time goes on. Yet, that's not really the case. People may forget what exactly was said, but people definitely do not forget how what was said made them feel. This is a toxic cycle in which reinforces the idea that it is okay to laugh about people's sufferings, even jokes that revolve around the disrespect Black women face, and it further instigates not taking the severity of their issues seriously, thus creating a recipe for more and more violent, sexist, and racist attitudes. I chose this news story precisely because not only does it accentuate the myriad of problems in our society, but it's an admonition to believe in Black women and to protect them. Black lives still matter, and we mustn't forget that. Thank you.